I'm really excited to be able to share my story with you. So we are all here, we've all had various journeys which bring us to the point of our work and our mission and our love for the Red Cross. And I want to start off a little bit about talking about our plan. I have had my plan, which my plans changed and deviated over the years, and I'm sure yours has as well. From the time we're little, we have a plan. Maybe we want to grow up and we want to be a marine biologist. Or perhaps we want to grow up and be a school teacher, or a nurse, or a surgeon. And that changes as our life plan changes. We have that little bit of a reality. So my plan, if you will, a little over 6.5 years ago, was that my husband, who's the handsome one here in the front row, as you heard, we had just moved to Connecticut, to the shoreline, and I started a job working for an international nonprofit called Peace Jam. So the job was right along the mission of my heartbeat. And I was working with youth from all over New England and New York and helping to break down the barriers of oppression and systemic violence by discovering the root causes. I absolutely adored my job. And I had been there for just about a year. We decided it was time to try to have our first baby together. We had only been married for a year, however, we are high school sweethearts. And I just finished a week-long ride through all of New England and New York. So as a cyclist, obviously I love to bike, and with my job, I was the outreach coordinator, the program coordinator for Peace Jam. So I also did a lot of marketing. So part of my job was getting out there and spreading the word, and what better way to do that than by doing it with my own legs and my own heart and my own lungs, and not certainly needing to use any of the budget of Peace Jam. So I rode 600 miles through all of the states that I worked with, and at night I would stop and I would give talks in the communities and the colleges. And the irony here and why I share this is because I never even had a flat. Not a single issue. I made it home. I had a successful ride. We did a lot of wonderful media, raised a lot of money for the program, and life took a pretty big turn. So this was my trusty, it's a Jameis Coda, my bike, which now our dogs are named Jameis Coda. But this was my transportation vehicle that I would go to and from work every day. So in the blink of an eye, my life changed pretty quickly. And as you can see, so this big freight truck here has my bike wedged underneath the front of it. So it was a really beautiful fall day, and just cycling home from work, and car blew the stop sign and ran me over with front and back sets of tires. So just to kind of show you that image there, I'm going to show you a small 4-minute video that's basically going to encapsulate this, because I know a lot of times when I talk about the trauma, it's hard to actually imagine that I went through this looking at me, so I'm going to play a small video for you. Oh, that's right. When I was little, my dad had a bike shop, and so I started learning how to ride when I was about 4 years old, and developed a love of cycling. I, on a daily basis, would get out there and bike 12 miles into work and 12 miles home, and then typically do a spin once I got home, and on the weekends, my husband and I would do a century ride. So the date of my incident was October 8th, 2011, and beautiful fall day. And the sun was shining, and the leaves were perfect. Probably 4 miles from home, a side road off of Boston Post, along came a straight liner. He failed to stop at the stop sign. So as I was going straight, he was coming down, and he just unfortunately right through the stop sign and right into me. I was initially run over by the front set, and then immediately after the back set of tires. I was gonna grab my water bottle. Got dragged underneath the tires and quite a bit. Thank you so much. And getting rolled over, my pelvis broke into 2 pieces. My leg got completely degloved. Inside my butt got ripped apart, table up in my stomach, as well as the damage and a lot of intestinal damage. And so by the time the double doors opened in the ambulance, for me the lights went black. And apparently I had flatlined within about a minute after that. My wish, my dying wish, if you will, was just to keep me alive. I just been connected with the soulmate. I'm going to be alone for the day, and don't let me go. Well, my first memory post the lights going dim were opening my eyes and seeing my husband's face looking over me as I laid in the hospital bed. And I really thought it was either that night or it was the next day. And I looked at him and said, "How much so quickly?" My parents were on the phone and I said, "Sweetie, we've been here over a month."
Our wounds were extensive. Probably a good half of her body was covered by some kind of wound that needed a wound treatment. But really what I saw was this face of this woman whose eyes said, "Please help me. I need to get better and go home."
You know, my first couple steps were literally a couple steps outside.
When she told me she wanted to organize a road race, I'm thinking, all right, she just got hit by a truck. She's been, here for 6 weeks. Really?
I'm like, I'm nervous. I did this for my first half marathon. It was actually the Central Park half, and my friend's little girl came down with stage 4 Willis tumor. She had sent a photo of herself, the little girl, after she had her kidney surgery, and she had a big scar across her abdomen. And her mom sent me the photo and said, "Rowan said that she's a warrior princess like you." And I thought, all right, I'm kicking it up a notch, and I'm going to do the first half, and I'm going to raise money for this little girl.
I truly believe that if you have a good head on your shoulders and you're mentally put together that you want to achieve something, you're going to achieve it.
I can't explain to really even to myself how I've been able to recover so well, with the exception of that I've never been willing to give up, and I've been given a second chance at life, and I'm not just going to live, I'm going to live that life. All right, so that was my reality. So after that, the next 5.5 weeks, I was in a coma. I just was in and out of surgeries. So I had 15 surgeries initially. I've now had 30 surgeries. I was incredibly critical. I just kept flatlining. So 78 units of blood just within the first 2.5 days because my femoral artery was ripped. So as quickly as they could get blood and blood products into me, unfortunately, I was bleeding out. So not only did I need blood, but I also needed a lot of hands-on compression. And the amazing thing was I was at one of the top trauma centers in our country with wonderful technology. And had it not been for those hands over top giving me those CPR compressions, I still wouldn't be here today. And my trauma surgeon, thank God, decided not to ever call it. So I had been without a heartbeat for a little over 20 minutes until they were able to get my heart started again. I show this slide to show you the face of Red Cross. So for me, yes, I'm a trauma survivor. I'm also the mother of 4 lovely furry children. I am a triathlete. I'm a cyclist. I grew up, my father owned a bike shop when I was a little girl. That's my dad and my brother. So cycling is literally part of my DNA, I like to say. My husband is my high school sweetheart. That's our prom picture. You can see we had really awesome hair back then. Daytona Beach, Florida, by the way, so that kind of explains a little bit more. But you know that everybody has a background, right? We all have a background, we all have a story. And as we continue to evolve in our life journey, that reality is changing constantly as we're changing. And bearing in mind that that same little girl that you saw up there that was with her daddy, that loved cycling, that same little girl is still a part of me. And that same person, the little boy, the little girl that was with you, that had those initial goals and dreams and aspirations, is still very much a part of you. So a lot of my healing has been continuing to stay connected and grounding to that and honoring that part of me. Because as adults, we start to lose focus. And we forget that we're still that same little person on the inside, right? We just look a little different. Why is there a bike wheel on the screen? So this is where the Red Cross, to me, really comes in. I use a bike wheel as an analogy for a lot of reasons. Obviously, I'm a cyclist. I love to look at the bike wheel, and we have one that's clearly not mine, but it Skip's daughter's, which I think is fantastic. So what a cool analogy for the Red Cross family. So the hub is the mission of the Red Cross, if we were to think about that. We have all of these spokes connecting to the hub, connecting to the mission. That's all of you. We have those who are our volunteers. We have those who are our blood donors, our instructors, our staff members, our donors. And what is this? This is our mission. This is our mission in action. And I love to show this just because I think it's such a powerful metaphor for all of us when we're doing our work to remember what happens if one of these spokes becomes untrue. I don't know if any of you out here are cyclists, but on a frame like that, if one of those spokes becomes untrue or pops, you're not going to be riding very well. And I think the same is true for the Red Cross. For that one Red Cross, together we work so much stronger and so much more efficiently, and that's how we're carrying out our mission. Tell your daughter thank you for letting me use that tire. So our mission, the rubber on the road here, we talked about this earlier. One of our spokes, is this person here tonight that's teaching CPR? I just saw this on the website. As someone who has now received CPR on numerous occasions, I have so much gratitude for every single one of you that learned CPR. If you have not learned CPR, learn CPR. Encourage other people to learn CPR. Yes, you may potentially break a rib, and that's okay, because as I say, they're dead already, right? So at this point, they may come back and have a little crepitus, and that's okay. Learn CPR, educate people to get trained. It's powerful. Human family, we are all so incredibly varied and different. As I continue to go through my healing and recovery, I hit a lot of very negative, very dark places. Learning that we lost the ability to have our baby. Learning that I never knew if I'd walk again. We didn't know if, let alone, am I going to bike again? Am I going to compete again? Am I going to work again? I have a traumatic brain injury. Thankfully, I'm able to speak pretty clearly. But we don't know what all those long-term outcomes are going to be. So there is a lot of what ifs and a lot of opportunity to really dwell in self-pity and frustration. And remembering through this that it's okay to be messy sometimes. And I think that's true for all of us, and we all need to remember that. And I show this slide to remind you that some of the most beautiful pieces of art come out of the messiest studios. And I know also probably you can say the same for your kids, that your kids can be really awesome, but maybe their rooms are a mess, right? So it's okay to be messy. And as Red Cross workers, too, to be messy and to lean on each other. And that's the way that we get stronger. I had 2 months of inpatient rehab after I was in the coma. Knowing that I would have a minimum of 10 surgeries moving forward, I was absolutely devastated. The first few times they were able to get me to stand up, my blood pressure would just tank and I would start to pass out. And I, again, started going to that place of sadness. I became very angry that my husband let me live because he was basically calling the shots for me. I was supposed to be a DOA, dead on arrival. Thankfully, I didn't go until I was in the trauma bay, that I actually stopped. So apparently, my last memory is going over, they call it the Q, if you've ever been in New Haven on the way to Yale. So my last memory is getting over the Q bridge, everything's starting to get a little warm, but by this time the morphine's kicking in. The double doors opening and everything just kind of starting to go black and a lot of hands reaching out to me. That's when I thought that I had actually passed. but that's not when I passed. My trauma surgeon said that's when I just went into complete shock and apparently started cussing and swearing. I just did a 600-mile bike ride. Not a damn bleep bleep thing happened, and here I am cycling home from bleep bleep work and flatline. So my trauma surgeon giggled and said, thank God she shut up. Now we can get to work. This is Jody Williams. She's a Nobel Peace Laureate. She's a little bit eccentric, to say the least. But some of the laureates that I've worked with have been incredible mentors in my life. One of the things that she has always said is that emotion without action is irrelevant. And while I was at Gaylord and I was hitting that point of low, almost wanting to I was wishing I would expire, actually. I was very much just wanting to die. I didn't allow them to do wound care for me the entire morning, so I typically needed 3 to 4 hours a day, because over 50% of my body was pulled apart. So I had wound vacs, colostomy bags, drains everywhere, and it was not only humiliating, but it was incredibly painful and exhausting. So that day, I laid in bed. I don't want care, I don't want care, I don't want care. Thankfully, my nurses honored me. I think they're pretty aware that patients are going to go through these processes. But I remembered this quote from Jody that she had told me years ago at a peace conference out in LA, and I thought, if I have this much emotion that's welling inside of me, even if it's anger, it's positive in the fact that I have it. And if I do nothing with it, what a waste, because I am alive, and it's more than me. At this point, I am part of this human family, right? So that's when I literally hit a call bell behind me and asked if I could organize a road race, because I knew that with my previous experience in doing marketing and PR and cycling, that although I may never cycle again, I could at least organize something to get out of my own head. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware that volunteer, we do things, yes, we are being quote unquote selfless, but we're also fulfilling a huge part of our life, because that is also edifying and nurturing us. So moving forward, there's so much between there and now, but we left Gaylord. I have, as I said, I've now had 30 surgeries, so I would get to a point of recovery and being ambulatory again and going to events, and then I'd go back in for another surgery, and I'd be back in a wheelchair, I'd be back in bed for several months at a time, and then I'd have to kind of go through the process all over again. But one of the things that I learned is that although I couldn't be that competitive athlete anymore, I could still train. And I wasn't training to place anymore, but I was training to be as healthy and strong as I possibly could be to go back in under anesthesia. And I could do these races, and although I'm not going to place, I'm going to get a medal. And I could give this medal to one of my heroes and say, thank you so much for helping to save my life. I could go to a blood donor and say, I don't know if your blood's pumping in my veins, but I want to thank you so much for donating blood. You teach CPR. I want to thank you for teaching CPR. And that, for me, became this huge catalyst, just taking that gratitude and moving it forward. So now, my dear husband and I are, I'm a board member with the Red Cross. We have done work on the disaster relief team. We also have worked with our home fire alarm campaign. We are running again. So in Connecticut, we have a running race team with our board and our CEO. And so part of what we do with our mission is getting out there and running and talking to people. So this was the Hartford Marathon. My husband ran with a coexist flag, because part of our whole philosophy is that we all bleed red, regardless of our background and our nationality and our ethnicity. We all bleed red. If you need blood, your heart really doesn't know the difference. And how powerful is that? So breaking down those barriers. We'd finished this marathon, and my CEO, Mario Bruno, I got a text message from him as we crossed over the finish line. We need people to be deployed immediately. Would you and Sean be willing to go down to South Carolina? And so it was I say our because we're basically one person, but it was the anniversary of my trauma that we were doing this race, because we always try to do something very full of life on the anniversary that I was run over. And I said, oh my gosh, we just did this. And he said, well, you wanted to celebrate this beautiful day. So if you're game, I'm game. So we got trained on the ERV, the emergency response vehicle. We did incredible crash course and was up until like 2 in the morning taking all the rest of the classes and the certs that we needed to be able to go. Because as you know, once Red Cross is in your blood, you're done. So we did everything. We showed up early the next morning. It was pouring rain, not quite a biblical proportion, but it was pouring rain. And down we went. And I show this picture out of all of them because it was exhausting, it was a ton of work, and it was so gratifying. And this little boy, his home, they lost electricity, they didn't have any warm food, his home wasn't habitable for a couple days, but he was down there every day helping. He wanted to help. So he basically showed up and said, like at the ERV, when we'd open up the double doors, what can I do? And my husband had assembly lines set up, so we would get out like basically we did mass care. So you have these big totes and everyone gets water and bleach and a mop and MRAs and all sorts of stuff, MREs. So this little boy's out there helping with the assembly line, and he was so happy and he was so proud, and we were saying, like, this is what it's about. Because although we're helping in the community, we're also empowering this young gentleman, and he is giving us so much joy by being such a light back to his community. So it was really a cool, time. So this is also this was what I was talking about, loading up the totes. So in conclusion, I showed this picture because now I do work all over, we go all over the world and speak. We had a photo shoot a couple months back for a magazine, and I felt so uncomfortable in the photo shoot for obvious reasons. And they wanted it for triathlon and swimwear and racing and whatnot. And I just stood there crying because I was so embarrassed of my body, because it's certainly not the athletic body that it used to be. And my husband said, do whatever makes your soul feel good. And I just went into tree pose. And it was the picture that was chosen, and it was the picture that continues to be used. And I think I'm really proud of it because this is one Red Cross right here. All these scars, all these stories. So I am the vessel. This is my being, this is my body, but my body embodies all of the energy and the passion of all of you and all that you do. So in closing, I wanted to share a word, Ubuntu. This is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and I've had the honor of working with him a little bit over the years. And Ubuntu is, I am who I am because of who we all are. And I think that is so beautiful and so powerful. Years back when he and I had dinner together, I was obviously starstruck by him because of who he is. And he's sitting there eating his fish and chips, very giggling and smiling and talking, and I'm looking at him thinking, oh my gosh, this is the man that helped end the apartheid, and he's never raised a fist, and he's witnessed genocide and just horrible acts of mankind, and he's only shown love. He's so full of love. Like, how does this exist? And I had my camera beside me, and I wanted so desperately to take my picture beside him because he's a celebrity in my mind. And by the end of dinner, he said, why are you looking at me this way? I'm just like you. We are the same. If you want to take a picture, let's take a picture. So we took a picture. And he said, I want you to remember that just because I'm black doesn't mean that I'm not your grandfather. I thought that was pretty damn cool. So I gave him a big hug. And by this point, I'm crying, and I'm kind of like, how do I even begin to have words for him? But he said, Colleen, you need to remember, because I was doing advocacy work, every breath you take is an opportunity. You're breathing in, you're renewing your cells, you're renewing your body. So every single breath in and every single exhale is this opportunity to let go of negativity and doubt and fear, negative self-talk, negativity about each other. And every breath back in is this breath of love and renewal and life and strength. And that's so powerful. And so there's a lot of resiliency factors that help bring me through to where I am today and to have this joyful movement forward. And clearly, this is one of the main pieces, is remembering that, because I'm always breathing, right? You're always breathing. So as long as you're breathing, you have that opportunity. So I thank you so much. Typically, I open it up for questions. I don't know if you would like to take some time for Q&A, but certainly, by all means, if you have any questions. I honor where you are, and I thank you so much for honoring me being here. And I just commend all of you for the work you do. The great thing about every single one of you is you don't take praise well, and that's because you are change makers and doers, and you're people of love. So let this be a moment of just soaking in the joy and the gratitude that you are to yourselves and to other people. Thank you.